としそんそん。
Hey my dear pirates, you are on channel Straw Hat's One Piece Theories, and in today's video we're going to talk about Zoro and how he gets his black blade in a definitive way. The black blade is the end result of the union between swordsman and his sword, and it seems that Zoro is already on the right path for that to happen, but there are some mysteries about this ability to blacken the blade of a sword. Why didn't Roger, Shanks and many other powerful pirates definitely turn their sword blades into black blades? And how is Zoro going to do that if all the time, if every new arc, Zoro ends up switching swords? Well, we're going to analyze all this in today's video. So if you want to be a pirate king like me and achieve eternal glory, go ahead and press the like button with all the power of your devil fruit. And if you're new here my dear sailor, already subscribe to the channel and don't forget to activate the notifications bell so you don't miss any new video, okay? Then join this crew that will dominate the entire Grand Line and the New World. Now without further ado, let's get to this epic video. And well my dear pirate, during his arduous training with Mihawk, Zoro learned more about the black blades and how to make them take on this more advanced form. According to Mihawk, Haki is necessary for this to happen, and in fact we saw this throughout the chapters, but unlike all great sword users, whatever the styles, Mihawk was one of the few who kept his sword with a blade black in a definitive way. And because of that, this whole question ended up raising a mystery. Why didn't Roger, Shanks and other powerful pirates who are literally known to have the most powerful Haki ever turn their sword blades into ultimate black blades? Well, the answer could be the affinity and union the user has with their sword. For, no matter how much the user of a sword names it with some special name, none of that is enough to make it a sword with the ultimate black blade. Yes, Roger may have chosen to name his sword after his son Ace, and Shanks may indeed be one of the greatest Haki users of all time, but none of that is enough for his blades to completely transform in a definitive way, which what is really necessary is affinity, unity, and, above all, having your sword as a true extension of yourself. The sword must not be a mere instrument of combat, the sword must be part of the life and interior of its user. And what reinforces this argument is the fact that Mihawk is an actual swordsman. He's not just a pirate who has a sword to use in a secondary form of combat. This becomes even clearer when we use Ryuma Shimatsuki as an example. A samurai is a swordsman and his sword is an extension of his body, that is, the sword of Ryuma, the Shusui, did not just have a cool name given by its user, she was something beyond that. We saw how Ryuma Shusui was treated as something special and legendary by the people of Wano, and because of this Zoro had to return it to the grave of Ryuma, who we recently discovered was an ancestor of Zoro. In a past video I even mentioned how Ryuma's sword should belong to Zoro since he is Ryuma's descendant. When Zoro received Shusui from Ryuma in the Thriller Bark arc, it had already been clear to me that Zoro had some correlation with the Shimatsuki, but in my view, it never made sense for Zoro to have to return the sword to Wano country, with sure he was a descendant of Ryuma, so Shusui rightfully belongs to Zoro. But it happened, the sword was returned and now Zoro has Enma in his place. However, unlike his swords, Shusui was the only one that was already blackened, and we know that a black blade is the sign that that sword, in addition to being powerful, was used by a high-level swordsman. That is, for Zoro to end up becoming the greatest swordsman in the world, he will need a sword with a black blade. Well, Enma, which belonged to Odin and is now with Zoro, is a very special sword for absorbing a lot of Haki. Because of that, Zoro at some point manages to make it completely black forever. In fact, there are some theories that this is already happening. And of course we're talking about Zoro and his sword's connection with death and hell. In a past video we talked about Zoro and his connection with death, hell, and how that could influence his powers. After all, it's not news to anyone that everything around Zoro has something to do with death and hell, so imagining that Zoro will have to use the abilities of death to blacken his blades makes a lot of sense. Enma is the king of hell, Sandai Katetsu has a curse of death, and Wado Ikimanji, which was created, look at this, by Kozaburo Shimatsuki Kuina's grandfather, and as we know she unfortunately died, but before that she gave her sword to Zoro and made him promise who would become the greatest swordsman in the world. And since Zoro recently met the Reaper, It's safe to say that this means that the peak of Zoro's powers is coming and that soon he will be able to blacken his swords using the power of death. But many believe that Zoro will receive, literally, a sword of death, a blade that will carry all the context of pain and suffering that we have behind Zoro, which is death and hell. Theory indicates that Zoro will get this last sword at the end of One Piece and this will be his last sword. Some other theories say that Zoro will fuse all his swords into one and thus he will become the true king of hell. But for me, the best possible way out for Zoro's last sword would be for him to have back Shusui, who is already a black blade and also carries all the same concept of death and hell that Zoro has under his shoulders. After all, this sword belongs to his family who are all dead, and whether or not Zoro received it directly from the hands of his ancestor Ryuma Shimatsuki, who is already dead, this would be the perfect idea for Zoro's last and most powerful sword. But thinking on the other hand, if Zoro had Shusui's sword in his possession, it would take away the true impact Zoro would have when he finally got an ultimate black blade. In other words, my dear pirates, Zoro will have to find an ultimate sword to turn into his black blade sword. Many characters use swords in One Piece, but few are the ones who effectively use them as an extension of their body. Mihawk is one of these characters and Ryuma too. This time it is Zoro who must become this character. The Enma sword that was Odin's is helping Zoro find that balance, but I believe that this will not be Zoro's ultimate sword that will become an ultimate black-bladed sword, but the Wado Ikimonji that belonged to Kuina. Zoro has had this sword since the beginning and he uses it as a symbolic way to carry out Kuina's dream, and his own dream, of becoming the greatest swordsman in the world. So even if Zoro ends up switching swords by the end of One Piece, the sword of Kuina will stick with him because it is this sword that will be Zoro's ultimate sword when he surpasses Mihawk and becomes the world's greatest swordsman. But now I want to know your opinion about everything we commented here today. Do you believe that the ancient sword of Kuina will be Zoro's ultimate sword? Will this be your black blade sword? But of course, if you made it this far, it's because you like the content, so it doesn't hurt to subscribe to our channel and become one more member of our fleet, my dear sailor. And of course, do not forget to press the like button, that helps a lot in spreading the video and the channel, so help us to become the largest fleet of pirates here on YouTube, okay? A big hug for everyone, and until the next video.